And today we're introducing a new DMP template. So my name is Janet Rothney. I'm one of the DMPEG members that helped develop the template. I'm going to moderate today, and James Dwarn is going to talk. We'll just have a couple initial slides, and then we'll get going. So today we are using the Code of Conduct from the Alliance. So the Alliance seeks to provide a welcoming, engaging, and safe community for everybody. Discriminatory language is not appropriate in any venue or platform. The Alliance does not tolerate harassment in any form, and harassment is understood as any behavior that threatens another person or group or produces an unsafe environment. And that code is adapted from the Code for Lib Creative Commons Conference Code. So as you probably heard, we are recording the workshop. The recording will be made available to the public on the Alliance YouTube channel with a CC BY license. And we will end the recording before the Q&A starts. So if you have questions, we will just do that live at the end. So please post those questions to the Q&A section. I'll be keeping an eye on those things, and we'll talk about them at the end. Feel free to use the chat for discussion, comments, and reactions. And a land acknowledgement. So please join us as we respectfully acknowledge the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis lands upon which we all live and work. It is important that we continuously endeavor to understand the long history of these lands and recognize what those histories mean for the work of truth and reconciliation for Canadian research infrastructure. We encourage everyone in the research community to learn about the lands you call home and consider what we can do to advance reconciliation. The Alliance recognizes the importance of acknowledging the land we occupy, and this is only a first step. As settlers and allies in reconciliation, we commit to reflecting on our actions and investigating how our work can support Indigenous data sovereignty and research priorities of these nations and communities. There's more information about this work at .land/English. We encourage you to add your land acknowledgement in the chat, and I will add mine there. So one last thing before we get started. So I'll introduce James. So James Dwarn is the Research Data Management Strategies Director, University of Alberta Library, and Academic Director of the U of A Research Data Center. With an educational and applied research background in the social and health sciences, he has an extensive research and data management experience across a wide range of disciplines, areas of focus, and data types. Locally, James serves as on U of A's Institutional Research Data Management Strategy Working Group as the chair. He's on the Indigenous Research Strategy Task Force and the Health Research Ethics Board. Nationally, he serves as a member of the Canadian Research Data Center Network of Board of Directors, and is co-chair of the Digital Research Alliance of Canada's Data Management Planning Expert Group. James, take it away.
Fantastic. Thanks, Janet, for the kind introduction. And hello to everybody from whatever time zone you're joining us from. I hope everybody's doing well, hopefully enjoying some beautiful spring weather like we're having here in Edmonton today. I'm just going to give a quick kind of overview of what it is that we're going to touch on. I want to emphasize that the plan is to have the content done around the halfway mark or so. It would be cruel and unusual punishment to listen to me speak for a full hour. So I'm going to try to keep that to about half the time, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers and discussion. And we're happy to have those come through the chat, or if you're comfortable raising your hand and unmuting and want to have do that verbally, then we can do that as well. Okay, so essentially we're going to break this up into four main content pieces. So first is just a little bit of foundational information around what are DMPs, what are their benefits and importance, then jumping into the Alliance and DMPEG. So that's the DMP expert group that myself and Jonathan Dory co-chairs. Jonathan is here joining us. He just finished presenting the same webinar in French. It was a great session. He set the bar high as he usually does. So I got to try to keep up here. And then we're going to jump into talking about the DMP assistant tool. Many of you are likely already familiar with it. But if not, that is a freely available web-based bilingual platform that is supported through funding by the Digital Research Alliance of Canada and is currently hosted nationally at the U of A Library, where I'm situated. And then we really want to jump in, and we're really happy to be at the point now where we can talk about the new template that has been developed by the DMPEG that's specifically targeting to support researchers in meeting DMP funding requirements, as well as an assessment rubric that we are in development mode with. And then we'll open it up for the Q&A portion. Okay, so what is a data management plan? And essentially, it's a formal document that hopefully clearly articulates the strategies that you will implement to hopefully effectively manage your data across the research life cycle. And so in that sense, it's not just talking about what you're doing during the active phases of research. So during those phases where perhaps you're collecting, acquiring data, you're performing quality assurance activities, data cleaning or scrubbing, different nomenclature for different projects and disciplines, or through the kind of traditional dissemination phase. So that could be whether you're publishing in academic journals, or perhaps your project has an integrated knowledge translation component, and you're doing other types of dissemination with stakeholders, but then also going into the long-term data stewardship. So that's looking at things like data deposition and data discovery and appropriate access, potential reuse. I know when I was first embarking on my own research-related career, more years ago than I'll care to admit, there wasn't a whole lot of talk around what happens to the after the end of projects, so to speak. Their conversations really hadn't started being talked about around, open science. Those were really and data deposit and open data. Those were really pushed by and large in the earlier days by the journals. Of course, we know we're in a very different place today. Research data management and open science are first right front and center in conversations, and are becoming fast considered essential components of the research process. And so we're here to try to support that in whatever way we can through the data management planning lens as well. Ideally, the objective is to address issues at the earliest stages. So ideally, using a grant-funded model, you would be starting to write a DMP at the funding stage, but it's never too late either. It's dealt with, I'm sure many of you here today, if you're out there, either you are researchers or out there supporting researchers, have taken on DMPs, or you've thought about managing your data at various phases. So it's never too late. But what we really want to try to do is see the culture change come through, where DMPs are just kind of a normalized thing. Where, hey, I'm starting a research project, whether that's funded or unfunded, or a big pan-Canadian, multi-jurisdictional or cross institutional project versus down to a smaller level project. All of them are important. All of them can benefit from data management planning and just helping to support the research and the end goals, which is really what we're here for. So just kind of a little bit of an overview, big picture, the benefits again of a data management plan. It's essentially, as I say, to set out consistent strategies prior to starting your research, ideally, for how the data will be managed, hopefully effectively. It's really about, for me as well, identifying both strengths and weaknesses in practices. So if you've conducted research and you've employed some methodologies, whether that's around data collection or data storage or dissemination or visualization or so forth, or deposit for that matter, and things worked well and you're happy with them and they meet the needs, then fantastic. There's no need to try to fix something that's not broken. But conversely, we tend to learn a lot of lessons in research as well. And sometimes certain strategies that you thought might work might not have worked quite the way you wanted. Or maybe it is that, some things became available that weren't available when you were doing the planning phase. I know I've been part of a lot of longitudinal research over the years. And, what we thought we were doing perhaps in year 3 didn't pan out, or something else became available. So we can kind of change horses midstream, so to speak, and recalibrate. So the data management planning component is just something you can think about it ahead of time, but also pivot a bit as you go if there are changes that need to be made. And then also to forward, the good things forward to the next DMP, and maybe to bookmark the things that maybe didn't work so good. And those are things you want to revisit as you embark on a new project. Ultimately, the DMP road leads to the long-term data stewardship aspect. So preparing data effectively for future reuse and preservation and sharing. And so the more that we can help with that, because those are fast becoming not just good best practice, but requirements from our National Funders Tri-Agency. I'll talk about that in a moment. So the more we can support that, the better. And reducing the overall cost of research as well. That's the planning component of the name. And anytime you can plan ahead, you can potentially, again, become more efficient. I've said it many, many times that I think the most important commodity that researchers have, or currency, if you want to use that wording, is their time. And that time needs to be well spent on doing the research. And so if it takes a little bit of front end time and investment to put into a DMP so that you pay the long-term dividends, and it's just like anything, the first time's the hardest, the second time's a bit easier. After that, you kind of get into a groove, or you know what you're doing with it. I think that's all time and energy well spent. So just touching base, I suspect, again, many people may already be aware of the tri-agency RDM policy, but if not, this is just a little bit of information for you. It was launched in the spring of 2021. There's a link here to the policy itself, and these slides will be made available, and there's links within the slides too, so you don't have to write notes frantically. You can get the slides afterwards and be able to get access to links. And essentially, the policy is there to support, again, the open science, to support the research, in a nutshell. And it spans across 3 pillars. So the first pillar is institutional research data management strategies. And so the take home from that is that every institution and research hospital in Canada eligible to administer tri-agency funds was to develop and then publicly release an institutional RDM strategy. We did that at our institution last spring. Most institutions in Canada have done that. I was just in meetings last week in Halifax and spending time with folks that are heavily involved in overseeing the RDM areas for the tri-agency. And my understanding is they're at close to a 90% compliance rate with that. And the few that are done, there's good reasons too, again, because not all institutions are working with the same level of capacity and support, whether that's physical or technical or administrative. So some of them, again, this is new for us, they're maybe inching towards a little bit. The next 2 pillars, DMPs and data deposit, are implementable at the funding opportunity stage. And so with respect to DMPs, essentially the take home is that specific funding opportunities may require DMPs to be submitted at the time of funding application. And so we've already seen a few have that. CIHR and SSHRC each have had a few smaller grants over the last year or so start to dip their toe in the water of that. And we really recognized as an expert group for the Alliance that we wanted to try to support those funding requirements. And so that really leads over to the new template that we're going to talk about as well. With respect to data deposit, again, that would be implemented at the funding opportunity stage. Right now, cocktail napkin timelines, it's looking like it's probably mid-2025 or later before we'll see the first implementation of that. So I'm going to jump into available resources. I want to start out with just a high-level touch base on the Digital Research Alliance of Canada. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with them or aware. I think most, again, are. The Digital Research Alliance of Canada is a fairly young organization in terms of being formally there, although if you trace the breadcrumb trail back to where it's come from, it comes from previous organizations, and there's actually a long history that leads up to what we have now with this organization that spans across a few areas and really just comes together to again, serve Canadian researchers and support research excellence in Canada, and also bringing Canadian research to the international stage. And so working across many disciplines and working at different levels, just trying to transform and work with researchers, providing both physical, technical, and administrative resources and supports. Oops. If you click on the link there at the above, then you get to their screenshot here that I've shown with the toolbar at the top, and I've just clicked on the services. So here you can see essentially the 3 broad strokes and the 3 pillars that the Alliance works off around, and that's advanced research computing, research software, and research data management, which is my wheelhouse. Oops. Sorry, that went a little ahead. There we go. Within the Alliance, there are a number of expert groups across RDM focused on discrete yet interrelated areas. Some are very niche, some are more broad. So things like RDM training would span across all types of things and across the research life cycle. We've got metadata expertise, data curation, data preservation, and the DMP expert group, Data Management Planning Expert Group, which I've been really fortunate to be a part of since its inception in 2015 and began chairing it, I think it's about 5 years ago or so, or co-chairing it, I should say. And I'm really happy to very recently have had a longstanding DMP expert group member, Jonathan Dory, join me now as co-chair. Jonathan's, again, here attending and just delivered the French version of this webinar. We are made up of folks from across institutions and organizations across Canada. I think we've got 13 or 14 members right now, so it's a fairly large group, which is great. Brings a lot of perspectives to the table, a lot of expertise, and it's just a good, fun group to work with. And I feel like these types of efforts, it's like volunteering. You get more than you give. I feel like bring a lot back to our institution. And some of my closest colleagues are geographically dispersed. They're on these expert groups and things like this I work with, and they're my people. So we're there to try to support, again, the big picture of the Alliance's mandates, but focusing specifically on the data management planning expert group to support resources, kind of the culture change, support it as it evolves, but also to support the DMP assistant platform and all of the things that makes it run, whether that be from a technical or a content standpoint. And those can include new versions that come along with the technical package, but also things around DMP templates, which we're going to talk about today, example DMPs, resources for people just to understand DMPs and so forth. So jumping into the DMP assistant. So I'm getting a little lag here with this internet. So this is just a quick overview of the DMP assistant. There's a link there to it, so feel free to click on that if you've never done so before, or if you'd like to go refresh. Again, as I mentioned, it's a free online bilingual tool, so you can use it in both official languages. I know intimately, having it hosted here at U of A Library, that it's not free to run, but it is free to end users and will never have a cost associated with it from that end. So it's certainly going to fit the budget. It provides step-by-step instructions across the research lifecycle with questions spanning specific areas and having instructions and questions, as well as guidance to help the folks that are there developing DMPs to do so. It really supports collaboration. It has cloud sharing features. Anyone can access it and use it. It provides examples of public DMPs right from the landing page. You can export DMPs, add templates into various formats. They're popular, including Word and PDF. Lots of other resources there. And again, we're really happy to be hosting at the U of A Library, which it's coming up to 10 years. We started launching it hosting it when it launched in, I think it was around mid to fall 2015. This is just a screenshot of the landing page for the DMP assistant. As you can see, we've loaded up here with a lot of different resources. And those start with the kind of dip your toe in the water 101 types of resources, like brief guides. What is a data management plan? How do I create an effective data management plan? So these are like 1 or 2 pagers. As well as some tutorial videos spanning across an intro level to DMPs, as well as to DMP Assistant as a platform, and then getting into managing DMPs with the DMP Assistant, so kind of going to maybe a little bit of a next level with it. We've got a couple of webinars there as well, which I suspect we'll look to update soon, as well as we start making new resources. So we might be finding some of the next things we turn to work on the DMPEG here coming soon. Again, if you want to go in and sign up and create an account, you can do so. If you haven't created an account, just go in and do the sign up piece. You just need to add an email, use the password, and you'll get a notification, and from there you can sign in. As well, here at the top, without even having to create an account or sign in, you can click on the link. You can access public DMPs. I'd say they're small in numbers right now. I anticipate the more that this landscape evolves and matures, we'll start to see more publicly available DMPs. But all of the DMP templates that are held within the DMP Assistant, and those span across generalized areas or discipline and methodological specific templates, they're accessible outside the platform there, and you can download them in Word and PDF as well. Jumping in, just bird's eye view, DMP Assistant key features. There's a number of them. As I've mentioned, it's free and available to end users. It's web-based and bilingual. It supports collaboration across institutions, and not just institutions, but across sector. Anyone can create an account with the DMP Assistant. You don't need to be situated at a institution, or even in Canada for that matter. I have a few projects where I have international collaborators, and we work together inside the DMP Assistant. It is endorsed by the tri-agency, which is fantastic, as is the new template. Never required to be used, but absolutely we want folks, and they want folks to be aware of this as a tool that can be leveraged and used, should they wish to. You can have multiple DMPs. I have many in there, given that I've been using it for a long time. And you can also have different access permissions for folks. So whether you're just sharing it as a read only for somebody to use, maybe as an example for a teaching purpose would be a good use for that, or an editor or co-owner, and you can giveth and taketh away those permissions very easily. It's just a little drop down and a button in there. I mentioned that that they are exportable, so you can export them out into popular formats, including PDF and text and MS Word. That can be useful as well. Anyone who's completed an ethics application will recognize that some of the questions on a traditional DMP, so to speak, correspond a lot to or overlap with what you might say in an ethics application. So if you've already done the work here and you can, export it out and copy paste that type of thing, copy paste it, then fantastic. Anytime we can help reduce administrative burden, we're all for that. It is a living document. So again, this is a place where you can come to, your collaborators can come into, you can work on it together. If it needs to evolve as the project evolves, then that's something that it supports. Now I want to talk, just tuck into the new template and the guidance. And again, we are really happy to be at this stage. It was taking, I'd say, the last 9 months or so, if we think about when we first started developing it to the launch to do so. But anything good takes a bit of time and takes a lot of people and perspectives. Again, we decided that we wanted to create a template that would be there to specifically support researchers in meeting DMP requirements. And so the new template is, and this is the name of it inside the DMP Assistant Platform, Alliance Simplified Template. Everybody seems to like the simplified part of that, and funding application stage. So if you trace it back to the conversations, it was really about, what do folks need to talk about at the funding application stage? Recognizing that you may not need, a 10-page DMP, if you ever do, for certain projects, or 6-page, or any prescribed length of a DMP for that matter. But there's certain things that any project, regardless of what discipline or methodology they're employing or the complexity project, that they could benefit talking about from. And of course, if we fast forward to the requirement piece and the tri-agency, and they're thinking about down the road when they have their funding calls and their funding opportunities where DMPs are submitted with them and they're reviewing them, they of course from a kind of efficiency perspective is the way to say it, not wanting to get 15-page DMPs times 50 applications as an example. That's a lot to review. So they were trying to think about how can we support the science, do right by the research, have a good DMP requirement in place, but also make it manageable. And so this is really where this led to. So it's much shorter than other existing templates. We got pretty surgical with it relative to the ones you've seen before. And it still encompasses key questions that span across key areas. But rather than inside the DMP Assistant having sections, it's one section with 5 questions essentially. And we've then included overarching guidance. Some of that guidance you would recognize from having been a question, for instance, in a previous template, but all of it is really important. And we want to make sure that, anybody coming in is at least looking at this and considering it. The template content is available from the DMP Assistant homepage as well, so you don't have to sign into the platform to see it if you just want to take a look at it and see what's there as well. So as I say, it was developed by the DMP expert group. It took an absolute village, and my thanks to everyone that was involved in that work. It's like a lot of complex stuff. The toughest thing is getting out of the gate and just getting the direction and kind of working through some things. But it's such a great group to work with, and I knew we'd get to the finish line. And I really want to put a shout out in particular as well to Marcus Closen, who is here on the call. He is currently the DMP product lead for the Alliance, but formerly he was the DMP specialist, and so he worked really closely with us on content things, and I worked really closely with Marcus, and he's a bit of a taskmaster when it comes to timelines, so he kept us honest and on target, but doing it in a really meaningful way. And part of that included that we conducted robust and comprehensive review and feedback activities across key stakeholders. So that was a mixed methods approach with surveys that were given out there that had actually a draft version of the what's now the final version of template embedded so that people could rate them and provide standardized feedback, and also focus groups. And so those key stakeholders included researchers, 100%, they're the end users, DMP assistant administrators, so that's folks that are situated at institutions and organizations across Canada. There's over 100 of them, and so they had the opportunity to review the draft version of it and provide us feedback as well, which was really helpful. The Alliance's Research Data Management Network of Experts, as well as the Tri-Agency. And so that fast forwarded to sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Fast forward to where we were able to launch the template. I think it's 3 weeks tomorrow, if my math is correct. It's about 3 weeks in, and we've received really good feedback from it. It's been really favorable. I think most people are really happy to see, again, a simplified version and something that help people to meet requirements. I really want to highlight too, and I haven't done this yet, is that if you're administrators of the DMP Assistant platform out there, you may already know this, but if you're not yet and you want to become, sign up your institution and be administrators, again, it's free to do so. You then have the opportunity to customize any of the templates and the guidance that are within the DMP Assistant platform. And I think that's really powerful. I think that's really important. So we come along as a DMPEG expert group and we do feedback activities and we put it out there. Is anything ever perfect enough for everyone? I think that's a pretty impossible bar to reach, because there's so many people. And as well as just that we recognize that there's different needs based on context from institutions and organizations. So you may want to go in there and tweak a question or add a question or do whatever you want in that case. But also we recognize, for me, I really believe that the real power in the DMP Assistant as well is around the guidance that's provided. So it's not just, hey, researcher, you have to create a DMP, here's a question and drop the microphone and walk away. It's here's the question and here's guidance that can help you to answer that question, including like links to external resources, things like that. And so to that point, if you are at an institution or organization and you have specific resources, whether that's expertise on campus or platforms or ways of storing data or so forth, and you want to make sure that your researchers are aware of that, then that's your opportunity. You can come in, you can customize the template and make sure that you're able to do that. And you can do that as your landscape evolves. I know here at U Alberta, it is evolving. Sometimes it feels like glacially, but other times really quickly. And we want to keep up to it. We want to make sure that we're making sure that our researchers are being set up for success and aware of what's available for them. So this is just the big picture of what the content consists of. Again, the overarching guidance spans 4 main areas. So policies and requirements. So if you're applying for funding and maybe your funder has a requirement, for instance, a DMP requirement, that would be an important one to know as you fill out a DMP, or maybe as the data deposit requirements come along, then that's just a prompt for folks to think about it. The onus is on the researchers to be aware of those. Maybe there'll be institutional requirements and policies coming through, guiding principles around things like open science and the FAIR principles, so making data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, as well as Indigenous data governance, which unfortunately is still very often overlooked for a lot of projects. I think a lot of projects, it's very clear that there's Indigenous communities involved or knowledges, but actually more that it's not so clear, or researchers aren't even aware of it. And so just making sure that we're making folks think about these things and consider it. And if you're not sure what the answer is, it's okay not to have the answers as well. I think managing data starts with just asking the questions. And if these are the prompts and then the resources and links to reach out to the expertise that can assist you and help you better understand and support the project, fantastic. Also think about responsibilities and resources, kind of the default setting of everyone will do something. We know where that usually lands us. It's usually not anyone does it, or not to the degree you might need it. So just thinking about, for some projects, you may need dedicated time, or just what responsibilities are there and what resources do you have to meet what you're hoping to do. Getting into the actual content, then we span 5 main questions. So across ethical, legal, and commercial obligations, data collection and acquisition, documentation and metadata, data storage and access. So that's really about the active phases of the research. So not just how are you storing data and dark storage, but how are you actually getting the research done? How are you storing the data in a way during the active phases where all of your researchers can access it and work with it? And especially if you need to meet security requirements, or if it's big data, like there's all sorts of different challenges. And then it all leads to the long-term data stewardship portion and the deposit and preservation. So I just wanted to show a screenshot here of what it looks like inside the platform. If you have already used the DMP Assistant, you're probably already familiar with this, but essentially any given question is going to look the same. In this case, we're talking about the ethical, legal, and commercial issues. So for each question, we've got the core question, what considerations we take into account with respect to ethical, legal, or commercial issues, and then we elaborate on those questions. So we're kind of going, okay, so by this, we're meaning you should describe any applicable ethical, legal, and commercial considerations related to project and data, and so forth. So it's just kind of starting core. This is the question, and here's a little expansion on that. Anyone who has used Google Docs or Word will be familiar with this toolbar at the top. There's not a big wow factor with it. It's just simple and functional, which is what I like about it. If you're like me, you use links a lot and tables and color coding and bullet forms and all those types of things. So I like having that inside this platform. If we just kind of scan over to the right here, this is where we have the various guidance here. So for any given question, these are the guidance that comes out of the box from the DMP expert group and based on the feedback we got. If I was to click on the share notes piece there, that's just kind of an internal scratch pad, so to speak. So I could be collaborating with Janet on a research project, and I could come in and put that note and say, hey, Janet, I didn't think about the Indigenous data governance piece. I think we might have a component there, but I'm not sure. What do you think? You know, we could just have a little bit of a conversation there, and that could lead us to bookmark things and maybe follow up. Really helpful for those types of things too when you're dealing with large longitudinal projects where you've got a lot of different people doing things, but some people don't actually, touch directly with each other. You know, sometimes the people out there collecting the data in the field aren't there working with the biostatistician that's analyzing the data, and there's these disconnects. And I think that the DMP Assistant has an opportunity to kind of bridge those gaps as well and help folks working together. They could all be collaborating and working in here. I'm not going to just sake of time go through each question. I mean, the concept is the same for them all, but again, we've got the screenshots for all 5 here. So if you want to revisit them within this presentation or through the template that you can download, or even within the platform, feel free to do so. Again, though, the next question is talking about data that you're collecting or maybe bringing into the project under the plan, talking about documentation and data for future use and revalidation. So really just, in lay terms, talking about how you'll document your data to make sure that it's easily read and interpreted correctly. I find that metadata and documentation can be clear as mud to many, and I thought I was pretty good at it before I came into the library, and then that was in 2016, and I realized that I was a novice at best because I had some real expertise in this area around me. And it is so important when we think about leading, again, to the roads of the long-term data stewardship, and supporting, reuse of data in particular. And you need to have good metadata and documentation for others to understand, when we're long gone and your data remains, and how are we going to use. And the power of data that we don't know yet is what really excites me. It's I've worked with data, or I've seen folks work with data that I know was never collected for the purpose they're using it for, but that they're able to use it and leverage is fantastic. And when I talk to researchers, I kind of always, the way I think about it, and to kind of get them hopefully a little bit excited about, or think about it in different ways, think about your area of research. Think about data you'd like to have your hands on from 50 years ago, that would help inform your research, or to help, shed some light. And most people probably don't have that data. Some disciplines do, or to some degree. And then think about, the researcher 50 years from now, and you can be that person that helps, help to make that science open and help make your data that you're collecting today be usable for many years to come, and be impactful in many, many different ways. Again, talking about how you're working with your data, how you're storing and accessing, working with it. This one can be one of the tougher ones. It's really important. I mean, whatever your needs are, all projects need to some degree have storage of their data, whether that is really, really basic storage and you're not working with big data or sensitive data, to the most complex of scenarios. But it's often overlooked, and people kind of don't think about it necessarily, or think about it formally. And then you run into a problem when you're well into the research phase. The data horses are out of the gate, And that's not the fun time to be trying to solve problems, and it's not very efficient to get your research done. So just helping folks to walk through and understand, especially about who needs access and how are they going to access that? How are you going to back up data? If it's security, how are you going to meet those, and the ethics or human participant consent? How are you going to do the things that are just going to get the research done most efficiently while meeting requirements as well? This is one of the ones where I really think the guidance and the customization of it's really important. Again, we may be dealing with different things on different campuses and organizations. And I know at U of A, we're undergoing a lot of changes when it comes to data storage. And so I expect to be updating this a little bit as we go. And that's okay. You want that to reflect the world around them. And then finally, around the long-term data stewardship and how data will be managed and discoverable. The landscape has evolved immensely over the last 10 years for sure around data deposit and preservation. We now have a national service in Borealis Dataverse. There's over 70 institutions signed up for that. So if you want your folks to know if you have a Dataverse platform or solution that they can leverage, as well as we have the Federated Research Data Repository delivered by the Alliance, and there's lots of other repositories out there. And it's just helping folks to understand what is there and what might be appropriate for long-term preservation. Not all data are, not all versions of data are, and just thinking about, what they're going to be able to do to help meet those either requirements or just open science, supporting the research. I want to just finish off now with a plug for a forthcoming resource. So the DMPEG took all that time and effort and energy, developed a the template, and then we got a good night's sleep and woke up the next morning and said, what now? And what now is the development of a sibling resource in the form of a DMP assessment rubric. And so this is going to be standardized to correspond to the new template. And essentially what we want to do is to offer something to take it to the next level and help researchers, as well as those out there in the trenches working with researchers in developing DMPs, to understand what makes a good DMP. And that's easy if you say it fast enough, right? Like the context matters. Every project has different context. And one of the first things I remember when I started getting into supporting DMP landscape is researchers would say, okay, well, do you have an example of a DMP? And at that time, we didn't. We do now. We have a number of DMP examples available, and we've linked those resources to that homepage that I showed you for the DMP assistant previously. But there's no one cookie cutter solution, and I think you always have to think about your context when you're filling out DMP. But what the rubric's going to be doing is, again, taking it to the next level. We'll standardize it up across to the new template. And just as the work's early in, I can't say exactly how it's going to come up, but I think it's reasonable to say that we're going to end up with, I think, something that's going to expand on that question, offer some kind of scenarios, examples, kind of, bring it tangibly to a research setting, as also is to employ hopefully a fairly straightforward but useful scoring method, like a 0, 1, 2 scoring. So here's a question, somebody answered it, and if I was to score it, and I don't mean scoring in a pass or fail sense, I mean it in a let's help strengthen it sense. Like if you're missing something, let's help you with that. Let's help you support the research. A 0 would be, yeah, you didn't answer the question at all, or a big, kind of a swing and a miss, sort of, so to speak. A 2 would be, yeah, you got it. We got some good information. There might be a little bit more work to do, or maybe some things aren't clear, and so let's now, this is the opportunity, come and strengthen it. Or you nailed it out of the park, fantastic, you've answered this fully, everybody's happy. So that's a really simplistic way of describing it. We are aiming for a fall 2024 release. I think I want to keep it that high level. I'd love to go earlier. Marcus would like to commit us to earlier, I know, probably, but I like to underpromise and overdeliver. So we're going to try to aim for that fall 2024 and earlier fall. And then just to leave it off, we do plan to conduct post-review feedback activities similar to what we did during development phases within the next 12 months for both the template and rubric. If I was to read tea leaves, I'd think right around the 9-month mark, maybe somewhere in there. The big thing is what we'd like to do is to see the template being used. So we'll keep an eye on the usage metrics, because once it's been used enough out there, we can then get more kind of meaningful feedback from folks that have actually used it in practice, including across all those stakeholder groups, including the tri-agencies and folks that are administrators and the researchers and end users.